In an increasingly polarizing world, sports allow people from all backgrounds and with different ideologies to join together in supporting the same team or player without question. Nothing else can claim to do this with such frequency and passion as sports. The Locker Room focuses on local sports and highlights the achievements made by our prep and collegiate sports from around the Spokane area. Justin Reed, former sports editor at the Gonzaga Bulletin and current sports reporter at the Spokesman Review, grew up in Spokane where he attended Meade High School and later went on to graduate from Gonzaga University in 2017 with a degree in journalism. Now, here's your host, Justin Reed.
Welcome to the Locker Room. I am your host, Justin Reed, and today, bringing back Matt Santangelo to the studio, Executive Director of Hoopfest. This will be your fourth Hoopfest? Fifth already. Hey, 5-year anniversary. There we go. So we'll jump to Hoopfest in a second, but let's learn about you a little bit. So you're from Portland.
Yep.
Played at GU for 4 years.
Yep.
How'd you get to GU?
Yeah. So right from Portland, youngest of 9 kids. I got 5 sisters, 3 brothers, and I say this a lot. This is the first time it's been recorded, but you know, my 3 brothers taught me how to be physically tough. My 5 sisters taught me how to be mentally and emotionally tough. The lesson I learned from my sisters is a lot more valuable than the lessons I ever learned from my brothers. But grew up in a family that was, I would say athletic, not, I'd say more game players. You know, I remember my dad, anytime we were ever waiting for a bus or a ride, we'd be, couldn't have idle time, so we'd be pitching pennies against a wall or some type of games. But started playing basketball in 3rd grade, and I kind of fell in love with it. It really helped me, especially through the puberty years. It was kind of my release and outlet, and got to play for some great coaches and had some great teams. And ended up being recruited, won a state championship in high school, and again played on good teams, even on the national kind of AAU circuit. And then ended up being kind of recruited by a number of different schools, but Gonzaga was one of my final 5, along with Stanford, Northwestern, Rice, and Houston. And University of Oregon. But at that time, Gonzaga was kind of on the rise, and it was under Coach Fitzgerald. Coach Few was an assistant coach, and matter of fact, Fitz and Few recruited guards, so those were the 2 that recruited me. And I remember this to this day. I had Coach Fitzgerald in our living room with Coach Few and my parents, and he was kind of giving us the pitch on why Gonzaga, and he said, "Hey, no one's bigger than the program, no one. But if I had a basketball, I would give it to you and say, we're going to go where you're going to take us." And coming from a large family, I knew no individual is bigger than the family. No individual is bigger than the community, the team, the social circles that we live in. However, Coach Fitzgerald and Coach Few were giving me the opportunity to have influence on where that group would go. Now, as an adult, I realized Fitz probably told that to every living room game. He used that line, probably, but at the time it was hook, line, and sinker. And so that was kind of what sealed the deal for my time to come to GU. And I came and redshirt. And as a high school senior, if you sat down and said, write what you want your college career to look like, I don't think I could have dreamed big enough that 20 plus years later would still impact my life on a daily basis, the fact that we had the career that we did while at GU.
So what is it to you? What does it mean to be a Zag?
Oh gosh, what a great question.
The short version, because you could go on forever.
But it's definitely a characteristic trait. That's something that all Zags carry it, and it's not unique to basketball, certainly, even though that's where I learned it. But it's definitely a characteristic trait of that idea that you are just a piece of something much greater than you as an individual. It's a little bit blue collar. It's a little bit chip on your shoulder. This is the Gonzaga of old, not the Gonzaga of today. That when we came in, it was Gonzaga. It was even Gonzaga once. It was from Spokane, Washington, not just Spokane. So we battled all those types of national perceptions of what the city and the school were all about. But we use that to kind of fuel our fire. And so that Zag mentality is just kind of the, anyone, anywhere, but with a little bit of class and a little bit of grace and a little bit of fire. I just think it definitely has continued on and strong, and a lot of that is that continuity of that coaching staff. But there's ties to the university side, the student side, and I think what happens with the Gonzaga recruits is that a lot of times those student athletes recruit themselves to GU just as much as GU recruits those student athletes. There's a certain kind of consistent character trait, that Zag quality, that allows those athletes to come into GU and have success.
So over your 4 years, obviously some great moments when you were playing. There was the one obviously, against Florida. That's what everyone remembers.
Yeah.
That's when you talk about Gonzaga of now, that's what everyone goes to. Outside of that, of Casey Calvary's tip-in, what was your favorite moment?
Oh gosh, I mean, you think back. So we had 5. I redshirt my freshman year, and we had in my freshman year we had 5, would-be freshmen: myself, Mike Nielsen, Ryan Floyd, Richie Fromm, and Axel Dench. And then the year below us was Casey Calvary, Mark Spink. The year we got Quentin Hall, a couple years he was a junior college transfer. But I think about that was 98, 99, but the 97, 98 team was probably the best team I played on at GU. That was Coach Munson's first year. So it's funny you talk about a program that has such great consistency and continuity. I had 3 coaches in 4 years, so I don't want to say I'm not coachable, but there is a common theme there. But we had came in under Fitz my redshirt year and freshman year, had Munson my sophomore year and junior year. We went to the Elite 8. That created an opportunity for Munson to go to Minnesota, and then Coach Few, came in my senior year as head coach. So saw a lot of changes. But that you talk about those moments. That 97, 98 team when Coach Munson, Coach Few, and Coach Greer kind of took the reins of the program, they really scheduled up. They had a belief that we need to schedule. Why can't we go play these? So we played, we played at the top of the World Classic. We beat, Tulsa, Mississippi State, and Clemson. They were number 5 in the country. We go to Michigan State and play there against Tom Izzo, and we get beat at the buzzer. We go to Kansas when we play in Lawrence and in Fog Allen, and we're up at halftime. And then they rock chalk Jayhawked us in the second half, and we lost that one. But those are talk about experiences. That was just one preseason. And we ended up winning conference, but ended up in the postseason NIT. We lost to San Francisco in the conference tournament championship. But that was really that starting point, the birth of that confidence to say, yeah, we can do this. It doesn't matter what the name on the front of the jersey. We're going out there and playing with that type of heart and that hunger and that chip on our shoulder. And that's one thing that our group did really well.
So after college, you went on to play some pro overseas. Yep. You also were able to play for the World University. Essentially like the younger
USA.
Brother to the Olympics.
Yep.
And hey, you also have a record that you have the most made 3-pointers by a USA player.
Yeah, tied now with Carmelo Anthony of all people. He tied
Who's
me
that
later
guy
on.
again? Is he good or something? Yeah, that's pretty cool.
What a jerk.
So I mean, you have that experience. You have overseas. You have all this international where you're going into a city, a country that doesn't speak English, and they have probably some people who speak English, but I mean, what's that like?
It was
get acclimated.
I mean, what a great line of stories there. I mean, in Greece, for example, which was my first experience outside the States, we literally played in dugouts, so people couldn't throw stuff at the back of our heads.
Nice.
When I went to Spain, Gustavo, our head coach, who's a great Spanish coach, only spoke Spanish, so we would do what you just said. We kind of have the non-Spanish speaking player stand to the side of a huddle. And we had an assistant coach that was supposed to translate. Well, Gustavo was pretty fiery, so he'd be going on, blah, 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 defensivo. And the assistant coach would be defensive. And blah, 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 intensivo. And, the assistant, intensive. I'm like,
thanks.
Pablo, I can figure out those words, man. I need the context. Like, what's all the other noise he's in? So, after about 10 days, you're like, I'm just going to go in the huddle and learn the international language of basketball. You just pay attention to body language. And as a point guard, that communication between you and your teammates is critical. If you can't yell cut or post or outlet or those things that you need to do just to make the game function, like that becomes a challenge. So you had to learn at least those languages, and you had to be really, on top of that body language and understanding like eye contact and using different ways of methodologies of communicating because you just simply had to.
So now it's kind of transferring over to Hoopfest. You came back to Spokane. Did you ever play Hoopfest?
No, because when I was in school, we couldn't play.
Yeah.
And just the nature of Hoopfest. So we'd always come down, a huge weekend, obviously just ton of great energy and vibrant and diverse, and you would get to see and enjoy it. I used to go to a lot of Hoopfest parties, different families. Matter of fact, I coached a couple Hoopfest teams. I had people call me. The Heber family just cold called me, will you coach my daughter's team? And I was like, sure. And so I coached. Why not? And so I coached teams before, but never played. And so when we moved back to Spokane, at that point I had my children that were old enough. So now I was coaching my own kids in Hoopfest and still around it but no kind of context outside of this is a great event. Like didn't know anything behind the scenes, didn't know the the all the moving parts and the challenges that kind of what it takes to pull off an event of this magnitude. But however, just always loved it because it was, I mean, literally, it's the best basketball weekend on earth. That's our mission statement, and we got a strong argument to back that up because it is so unique and so rare, in anywhere in the world, not just in this part of the world or even in the United States. Like it is larger than life.
So you came back in 2006.
Yep, and in 2006.
8 years later, 2014, they're looking for a new executive director.
Yeah.
How did you find yourself to be, now you're interviewing for it? Kind of talk to me about that process.
Yeah, so I got out of basketball when I first came back. I went to work for a company called Summit Capital, which is an investment, a registered investment advisor. Great experience. I mean, just kind of opened my world up a millionfold because of the clients that they had and those experiences. And so it just got to learn a lot of different ways of doing things, right? And so it was kind of this crash course, unintended education that I received. And after about 5 years of that and the Great Recession, so lived through the Great Recession, I decided that a lot of our clients were owners, were leaders of their businesses. And so I was like, how do I become an owner? Like, how do I, if they're my mentors and they're the people I'm learning from, like, how do I become more like them? And so I moved ironically into insurance on the human resources side. And so I moved to Maloney & O'Neill, formerly local company. They recently sold. And I was helping employers put together their employee benefits packages. So another great crash course in education. Lived through Obamacare there. So if you're doing the math at home, that's the Great Recession, then Obamacare.
You got some great things to work through there.
I'm a glutton for punishment. And so I was there, and everything was going well. Great experience. I was on a kind of a path to help one of the older partners retire and kind of take on some of that ownership, or at least have an opportunity at it, which I was, I kind of desired. And after that, I was like, gosh, maybe it's not ownership, maybe it's leadership I want. How do I, build a team like the teams I've learned from and the coaches I've learned from? And ironically, Hoopfest came calling. I got a call from a former board member that said, would you be interested in this? And at that time, like I said, I only knew Hoopfest as a coach at that point, or a fan. I was like, I don't know what this means. And so I said, what do I got to do? And he's like, well, you got to submit your resume. And so I think I went on to resumebuilder.com, and I'm trying to I played basketball and I did some other stuff. And I had my oldest son, Calvin, with me at the time. He's like, Dad, what are you doing? I was like, I'm building this resume. He's like, well, what's a resume? So you kind of do the thing. He's like, what's it for? And I said, you can't tell anyone, it's for Hoopfest. And he looks at me and he goes, what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know, man, but in order for us to find out, I got to get this resume in. So that's kind of how that particular piece of the puzzle fit. And so then I went through the interview process, and like I said, had no idea really what I was getting myself into until you're in it, because it's hard to explain and understand the breadth and the scope of what this event is and the organization that's grown around the event until your hair's on fire about this time of year for the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a fun ride for the next few weeks. Well, we're going to take a quick break.
Yep.
Then we'll jump back into some more Hoopfest-related stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
They say it takes a community to raise a family. It also takes one to build a business. I came to Spokane 12 years ago as a Whitworth student, and I planned to leave after graduation. But the more I got to know this community, the more I wanted to become a part of it. My husband and I have built our business in Spokane, and now we're raising our family here too. We operate a consulting company that provides creative business development strategies. Our approach is holistic and dependent on intentional connections and relationships. And no one understands connections and relationships better than GSI. They direct momentum towards investments in our community, provide resources that help business leaders connect, and they're dedicated and passionate about making Spokane great. GSI gives me the confidence to build my business here because they believe every organization, even a small one like mine, adds big value to our community. With GSI's help, Spokane will be a place my son will want to build his career too. I'm Eva Marquette, owner of Freshview. We're creating something greater with Greater Spokane Incorporated.
Hi, this is Kurt Stockwell with Well Dressed Walrus. We are a local website design and development company here in Spokane. What we do is build beautiful, usable websites for local businesses. A website needs to be beautiful, it needs to be usable for your users, your customers, and yourself. Contact us anytime. We'd love to talk with you about your online marketing.
What? You haven't been to the library lately? Stop in today and see that the library is more than books. Spokane County Library District facilities feature on-site technology, including Wi-Fi, computers, and printers, as well as free use of meeting rooms. The Library District offers events and programs for all ages, from story times to career development and employer classes to Social Security workshops. Our staff is well trained and happy to help. Find out more about your library at scld.org.
All right, welcome back to the locker room. I'm here with Matt Santangelo, the Executive Director of Hoopfest. So, Hoopfest is, I mean, how many days away? You guys have a countdown on your website. I should have looked before we came back.
Who puts a countdown on their website? Like, who needs that type of pressure?
And it resets every single year.
Yeah,
it goes
does.
from 365 right after Hoopfest, and you know what's coming, right?
So at this point, you're not even watching because it's going to come whether we're ready or not.
Yep. Just being a part of Spokane, it's crazy because all of a sudden, and it happened with Bloomsday.
Yeah.
You're just hearing next morning, everything's set up, and you're like, oh, that's right. This is happening.
Yeah.
So you've been here. This is your 5th year.
Yep.
You obviously, with your background in basketball, your background in leadership, you were the point guard on an Elite 8 team. What is your goal for not Hoopfest as a whole, but for each player? What do you want Hoopfest to be for them?
Yeah, and Hoopfest has done this long before my time, but literally the mission statement is to be the best basketball weekend on earth. So how do they do that? And these may seem like kind of simple details, but I mean everything from the court tape we buy to the type of structures that we are created for Hoopfest, to the type of basketball we use. We just want to create that best experience that we can for those players. And we know it's hard. Like, we know the streets aren't great. We know court monitors. We know NBA officials can't get it right. You're going to be on a volunteer court monitor to and give them a bad time, and so. But you are creating this festival environment. But it's what makes it successful is the heart. Is the game. It's the game of basketball. And that's what keeps it going we're going to celebrate our 29th year. Hoopfest turns 29 this year. So, and that's really at the heart of it. So how do you do the things, make sure you're not cutting corners, make sure you're trying to, you are doing literally the best you can with the environment that you have. And that's a standard that was set in place. I mean, Hoopfest doesn't grow to this size and magnitude if that standard isn't there all along. And so a lot of ways, especially in transitional leadership, where I found myself when I first started in 2014, it was already the biggest and the best in the world. So some people can really shy away from that. It's like, hey, don't screw it up, and sometimes you feel that pressure. I've kind of tried to take a different approach where it's like, hey, here are the keys to the Ferrari. Go see what you can do with it. Let's push this thing forward. Let's see how we get Sports Center here. Let's see how we improve our relationship with Nike so Kevin Durant shows up. Let's see how we can generate other basketball opportunities like we're doing with the basketball tournament, the $2 million game, or FIBA, the international governing body, is 3-on-3 is going to be an Olympic sport. So you're just constantly pushing, but at the heart and soul of it isn't these big-time professional athletes, right? Because there's not 24,000 Kevin Durants, but there are 24,000 Hoopfest players. And so we got to make sure the integrity of the event is centered around what that experience is for the weekend warriors that show up, every year at the end of June to play in Hoopfest.
So let's go to Kevin Durant. That was obviously huge, and no one knew about it. It was a very well-kept secret. I actually heard when I was walking around that there were a couple rumblings the police knew because they had to get everything set up, and it kind of it spread like wildfire that about an hour before it happened, all of a sudden everyone's like, I think this is happening. Everyone's like, no way. Yeah. So how long was that in the works for?
It was on the works for a total of, what did he show up on Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? 4 days.
Wow.
4 days it was in the works. No, it's actually been in the idea of a Nike athlete's coming has been in the works for a couple of years. The fact that Kevin Durant showed up was literally 4 days.
Wow.
We got the call on Wednesday of Hoopfest week in the midst of everything else and said it's a 50-50 chance. Okay. Thursday was, 90-10. And literally Friday, we're going through run of show and operations and security around how does this happen. And really what the intention was is that between Hoopfest and Nike and that partnership, collectively we just wanted to create a moment. I mean, literally, that was the extent of it. Now, that probably took a lot of money on Nike's behalf to create a moment, but they did, and Kevin Durant came and got to see Hoopfest and be in Spokane, which is phenomenal. But the whole idea was we just wanted to pop up. And so that's why no one heard about it. That's why we kept it under wraps and then started to kind of leak it a little bit on Saturday, because by Sunday afternoon at Hoopfest, you love Hoopfest, but you're ready to go home. Like, it is hot. It's a long weekend. We all know. I mean, if you know it, you know it. And so by Sunday afternoon, we wanted that same vibrancy and energy in downtown, so that when Kevin Durant saw it, he saw Hoop Fest. He didn't just see a 3-on-3 event in a small community. We needed him to see what it is. And certainly we did. And by the time he left, and feedback I've gotten post that experience is that it's all good. And that opens up avenues for other things in that partnership to kind of continue to push that thing forward too. So I think we're looking forward to some really exciting things this year as well, because of the success of Katie last year.
So, and I know this has been brought up a few times, but you guys have the staff of Hoop Fest, and most people, they're thinking of the staff like, oh yeah, you guys probably have hundreds of people who are just there at the snap of fingers, but you really only have five full-time or six?
Full-time. Yeah, there's 6 full-time. Everyone kind of works in their silo, even though we're a team, because you manage so much. I mean, each silo is huge. But we're a nonprofit. I think that's an important piece of this, that to get the word out. I mean, we're a 501c3 nonprofit. No one's getting rich off of Hoop Fest, even though it generates close to $50 million in economic impact. That does not come through our office, but that's what's happening in the region. But it's literally 6 full-time employees. And then when you start to broaden it out a little bit, and I'll be quick on the organization, but now you're looking at all the youth programs we do, kindergarten through 8th grade. You're looking at Spokane, your Hoop Fest on the road in Las Vegas 3-on-3. You're looking at our outreach program with School District 81 called Ignite Basketball. And I only say that is that there's a lot of basketball that comes out of this office, and rightfully so. We should be the basketball office in town. We've earned that. Hoop Fest has earned that credibility, and so we do it throughout the year. It's not just the weekend, even though literally last week I ordered our Nike product order for 2019 in the heart of 2018's event. And so you're literally working on that one weekend all year long in the midst of all these other major programs that we do throughout the year. So
let's give a shout out to each one of those staff members, because they're not that well known, but I think most, if not all of them, have been there for longer than you have.
Oh yeah. So when I started, there were 6. So we'll go down the line. Okay. So Kelly Riley, I think, is on their 3 of them are on their 16th or 17th Hoop Fest, if my math is right. Kelly Riley's kind of our, we'll call it point guard, but center field in the office manager. She's the one that greets you with a smile, answers the phones, makes sure that the energy in the office is great. I was sitting next to her in our office is Giff Marlowe, and you know Giff because you were in the office, but Miss Giff does all of our kind of programs and operations around the programs themselves, so from registration to bracketing. So we all can talk about the physical site at Hoop Fest, which is this monumental logistical challenge. She does that for 6,000 teams, 14,000 games. She's registering and scheduling all these teams, which is really, really remarkable on the back end. And she's been there. The same with Kelly's, that 16 or 17 mark. The other veteran in the crew is Chad Smith. He's been there. They all came in at the same Hoop Fest, those 3. Chad is all of our volunteer coordination. So from the general volunteer to the court monitors and court marshals and area administrators that help manage the game. I mean, to our beverage experience, to our retail experience, to team check-in. I mean, all those volunteers flow through Chad for coordination, recruitment, and kind of stewardship and appreciation. That's a big job too. The last one on that row, and I'm thinking physically in our office, is Rob Davis, and he's the site manager. So anything that physically touches our site or our facilities goes through Rob. So that's clearly a big job. That's 422 courts this year across 45 city blocks, along with vendors and tables and chairs and tents and signage, and I mean everything that physically touches the site. It's a big one. And then Bailey Neelan would be the last one with me, and Bailey's in charge of all marketing and sponsorship, which is another huge job. I mean, Hoop Fest weekend, we trend #1 in the world on social media. Our hashtag does the last 2 years. That's before Kevin Durant shows up. That's just Hoop Fest on its own. And then we have about 200 partner sponsors that that we need, without question we need, in order to help execute this event and kind of keep the organization alive throughout the year. And she manages all of that. So that's a big job. And then I got to send a special shout out, because this time of year we're lucky enough to have another one come in and help, and that's Shaniqua Nillis. And Shaniqua was not a former Ladies Egg, women's basketball player at Gonzaga, long time kind of basketball local family, and she comes in and helps support on the marketing side as well as the vendors. She's a great writer, so she helps on our blog, e-newsletter, all that information that we're pushing out to help educate as many of those 250,000 people that are coming to Spokane as to to what to do in Spokane, what to do once you're here. She helps kind of manage and navigate all that stuff. So that's really, the in-staff team every day in the office. We have a great group of interns. And then it extends from there to those, hundreds to thousands of volunteers that actually do a lot of the heavy lifting to pull this event off.
So you talked about your office. You're going down the line. What's cool about your office? What's unique about it? You guys just moved, so
yeah.
What's pretty cool about your new office?
The physical office is great. So we moved into the Paulson Center, great classic building here in Spokane. We're on the first floor, so we have a little bit of street presence, which on every other weekend besides Hoopfest weekend, we're going to see what that's like when people are knocking on the door saying, "Oh, so and so didn't call a foul." You're like, "Oh man, come on!"
Lock the doors and turn the lights out.
But we have a basketball court, ironically, so we figured out a way. We moved in and there were all these drop ceilings, and we kind of took the drop ceilings away. And we're like, "Oh my gosh, we have 16 to 18 feet of ceiling. We better get a basketball court in here." So I have a little space with a big old beautiful backboard up. So it's more of a showroom, to be able to celebrate, and for us especially this time of year to be able to expand because we have so much stuff coming in and out of the office. So that's great. And so the physical office is really unique, but it's really great because at the end of the day, our job is to have fun, and it takes a lot of work for that to happen, but it is a basketball business, and having that perspective. And if you come to Hoopfest, and I know, again, you're going to have your own experience, but when you look around, you go this is a well-oiled machine. How do they do this? Just know that there are, essentially right now 7 plus a couple thousand volunteers behind the curtain that are kind of really pulling all the strings to make it work.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that, especially the people who aren't from Spokane, where kind of like what I said about Bloomsday, they get here and Hoopfest is all they know, and they don't see all of the volunteers and what it takes to get there. And it's a pretty impressive machine that somehow, some way, puts out a product that is essentially perfect.
Well, and I think the other thing too, especially for the volunteers out there, you have to hear it because this is a thing in our community in Spokane that other cities cannot recreate. You go to major metropolitan areas, there's 3-on-3 events.
And they try.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Small communities to big metropolitan areas, and they cannot create what we have here. And it's because of the volunteers. It's not the 6 of us, even though we're doing a ton of work to try to make it as easy and accessible for everyone. However, it's the volunteers that come and really create that experience. So when you talk about community events, I don't know which other one you would point to that's like ours, because when you look at big events or the arts or culture, the talent are typically the performers, right? They're the musicians or the artists that you're featuring or whatever. In this case, the talent are the weekend warriors. They're the knuckleheads that just want to go play ball. Men, women, children. We had an 88-year-old play last year. That's the talent. And so the rest of the functionality of this event is really just supporting that talent so those people, men and women, have such a good experience. But that's a ton of work in order to do that. And people make those sacrifices, which every year about this time is just completely humbling, because you look around, you know how hard this is. Yet all these people, thousands of people, step up and say, "Yeah, I got that. I'll do that." And you just go it's amazing. It's an amazing thing.
And it's kind of interesting to see that go full circle. You have Whitworth and Eastern, obviously Gonzaga, and you have these athletes that they're student athletes on the court, but they always give back to the community, and you have people in the community doing the exact same thing. Mm-hmm. And I think it's nice just to see from all levels of Spokane, you have fantastic people willing to take a weekend for free.
Yep.
And they make Hoopfest really
well, they get some Nike swag. We hook them up head to toe. All the court monitors get shoes all the way up to hats, and that's our small way of saying thank you, even though I know it's not always that small, but still it's a great way to do that. And I just think it has to be stories like that have to be celebrated, because we spend so much time delving into other subjects that aren't as fulfilling or satisfying or kind of fun, positive as a Hoopfest. That it has to be said. And for all the women and men out there that volunteer and help us pull it off, I just want to say thank you. Clearly we wouldn't be able to do it without all of you. And ironically now, with about however many days left, volunteer now, because we certainly need you here in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, go SpokaneHoopfest.net. That's the website. Yep. You also have the Spokane Hoopfest blog, and that will kind of break down everything. That'll give you the opportunity to volunteer. And I'm looking at the official Hoopfest clock here. 45 days,
there you go.
16 hours,
Yikes.
53 minutes, and 30 seconds until Hoopfest 2018.
Yeah.
So hashtag Hoopfest 2018.
Yep.
45 days away.
And then all Instagram, Twitter, Facebook are our major ones. It's all at Spokane Hoop Fest is the handle, so you can find really all the information, and especially as the weekend comes up, you'll find all that too. And then we'll also have our app. We'll go live in June as well for people that helps manage the logistics of when do I play, where do I play, and how do I get there.
It's always fun.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah,
I really
thank you.
appreciate it. Hoop Fest is a great time. I'm excited to see what you have in store this year.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Well, this is the Locker Room. Check back again. Hopefully in the next week or two we'll have another guest. And thank you again, Matt.
Yep.